I love my Black Templars army. I have a massive Templars collection, but that collection has never included a lot of vehicles. The flagship of my Black Templar motor pool, and basically the only vehicle except for a couple of rhinos, has been my Land Raider Crusader. This guy took many hours of kitbashing and converting to get it exactly how I want it, and it is glorious. Never really performs in games, but I still like to take it from time to time because it is so fun and fluffy. This has been my only vehicle for a while, and I've purchased and put together a bunch of vehicles, but I just never really get around to painting them. I like painting the little dudes, the guys. Kitbashing, converting, make each one unique and special. And vehicles are similar, but I just never really get around to it. They're so much bigger and they take so much more effort. And as Gimli would say, they still only count as one. My Black Templars pile of shame has been growing at a somewhat alarming rate with a bunch of gray-hulled vehicles. I was just lacking the juice to get through the vehicles, but one day I went to Armies on Parade at my local store, and there was a guy I met who he had taken his Space Marine vehicles, and he had taken a bunch of parts from like modern tank kits, M1 Abrams, all the reactive armor and the little accessories, and he had put them onto the Space Marine tanks. And it looked so cool. I immediately went home and I tried it for myself. This is my Gladiator Lancer, and I am liking it. I custom made all of this armor and accoutrement. Also, this Lancer Laser Destroyer, I didn't like the GW one, so I sculpted my own. This to me looks more like a Mega Las Cannon, and the STL is available for free on EonsOfBattle.com, along with a whole bunch of other awesome hobby goodies. This is a war machine. This thing has seen some action and done some business, and I feel like it looks really good alongside my ye olde Templars. The juxtaposition between these classic knights and a hyper-advanced death machine is really working for me. The only problem is, it took a very long time to build all of this stuff. I mean, there's a couple hundred individual rivets placed by me. It's a little undoable to do something like this for every one of my Templars vehicles. But that got me thinking, what if these were just glue-on bits that I could stick on? That idea has led to the creation of the Armored Accessories Bits Pack, a series of pieces that can take any tank to the next level. This bits pack includes extra armor in a bunch of different styles so that your tanks can be given that up-armored treatment, in the look that best suits it and in many different shapes and sizes so that the armor will fit anywhere. I've already played around with this stuff in some blue poster attacks, seeing what could be done, and I'm really excited by the possibilities, both on the new floaty tanks and the old school ones. There's also many glue-on bits for barrels, jerry cans, and equipment storage, and some tassels that are vehicle-sized. The little tiny purity seals never look great on big old tanks. They need something made for them. All these bits were made with customization in mind, so it's really easy to plan out a build before gluing things down. This bits pack was made by us, by tank players for tank players. This set is now available both digitally and physically, printed for you at EonsOfBattle.com. With these bits, I'm hoping I can get a lot of tanks done in a very reasonable amount of time. I have an absolute swarm of Black Templars infantry, and it'd be very nice to have them backed up by a respectable number of armored pieces that are wearing a bunch of armored pieces. Step 1 is going to be revamping this Vindicator, which is one of the oldest pieces in my collection. I pulled the tacked on bits off of my Vindicator, and I also cut off all the old bits. This tank is so old, it still has the old purity seals that I used to paint red. There is a little bit of conversion I want to do. I want to cut off this side door. This would be much easier to do before I had glued it all together, but I bet I can get it off. I tried sawing off the door, then dremeling off the sides. Eventually, with enough prying, the panel did pop off, and I cleaned up my hacking with some sanding twigs. I glued on a plain flat rhino door and then started gluing on my bits, some supply shelves. My infantry can't be bothered to haul their own gear and supplies, so that's left up to the tanks. Cutting off the armor, let these supplies sit recessed against the tank so that they don't stick out too far. Then on the back of the tank, I glued on some fuel drums. Back in the day, there were rules for getting extra damage if you were shooting at the back of a tank, and these drums are in a very precarious spot, but sometimes you just need that extra fuel. The front screw of this Vindicator fell off years ago, and I'll have to repair that, but while I have it off, I broke off all the decorations I put on there. And while I was looking at the front of the tank, I had some ideas of where to put some more armor. I think the front of my tanks should have the most armor. I went through my armor panels, finding the bits that fit over these spots, and I filled up all the spaces that I could, cutting off the little rivets that I could glue the armor panels down flat. And speaking of editing, I used my Dremel tool to sand down the dried glue spots from where these old bits used to be, and I also ground off the Imperialis. I think the plow could use some extra armor as well. I glued some long pieces over the looking hole and then some larger panels over the sides. I added some more armor to the front sides of my tank to protect the smokestacks. Then I brought some more armor up the front and on top. I glued on a searchlight over the camera spot, That original bit has been lost to time. With all the armor on there, I threw on some big old tassels, and just like that, my Vindicator is done again. This Vindicator has never looked so good. I don't know why. I remember bringing this home from the Warhammer store, back then it was called a Games Workshop, and putting it all together and putting on all the Black Templar bits, and then painting a bunch of it, but not all of it. I never painted the treads, I never painted the Stormbolter on top, never painted the big cannon round in the back. I don't know why I never finished it, but today it is getting done. And all this extra armor in the front, this guy now feels like it's earned the 2-up armor save. And that is the important thing about the Vindicator to me. I've been bringing Vindicators in a lot of my games, and it's been so nice because that toughness 11 wounds 2-up armor save soaks up so much of the enemy army's firepower that was meant to go into my squishy Crusaders and Sword Brethren, but instead, it's all tanked on the tank. And now, this tank is getting painted. I then hit the whole mini with a black prime. Then for my Black Templar recipe, I'm gonna go with the same steps I do for my infantry guys. A white zenithal with ink. After that, to try and work in some more details, I hit the whole model with a dry brushing of white to hit on all the edges. My Black Templar tank is looking the furthest thing from its namesake, so I put some Black Templar soup in my airbrush, which is a mix of Black Templars, Leviathan Blue, and Lamian medium contrast paint. And I sprayed this on, doing many layers until the tank was nice and dark. Then I took some wolf gray and I dry brushed this over everything to bring out the edges and shapes of the armor. Now the black is on there, I want to spice it up with some decals. I cut off some text from the Templar Space Knights decal sheet, available from EonsOfBattle.com, and I put this on the back. Then over the cannon, I threw on a big old Templar cross. There was already one of these right there, so I'm actually redoing a step I did 10 years ago. On the side of the tank, I put on a big old prayer from the Prayers and Litanies decal sheet, and then underneath of those, I put some Crusade badges. Then back to the top of the tank, I threw on a campaign badge, then a cross, and I put a little number 1 inside of it. This will be Vindicator number 1. As I get more, the numbers will go up accordingly. With those in place, I can start to paint up the armor. I'm thinking red. I started out with a dark red, and I base coated all the armor panels. I want these to really stand out against the dark armor of my tank. Once the base coats were done, I dry brushed all the panels with some pure red to brighten them up, and I hit on all the edges. I focused on the top of each panel to work in some contrast, leaving that dark red on the bottom. After the pure red, I cheated and switched to some fiery vermilion, which is an orangey color, and I did a lighter dry brushing to the top to push each edge and rivet even brighter. With the armor panels done, I threw some more white ink into my airbrush, and I masked off the edge of my Vindicator scoop, and then I reapplied my white highlights. I also threw these highlights into the exhaust ports of the power plants. I took some silver paint onto a sponge, and I put this on everywhere. But there was one spot I had to figure out before I could finish with the paint chips: the scoop. I threw some light gray over this as a base coat, and then I started painting on my hazard stripes. I think doing some chevrons radiating out from the cannon barrel will look good. I did black and yellow stripes, putting some orange on the lower parts and some ice yellow on the high spots, and then smoothing out all my blends. Once I was happy with my design, I did a sponging yellow for some paint chips, and I used a brush to make some of these chips and scratches bigger. The freehanding turned out so good and inspired me to keep going. I put a big Crusade badge decal from the Templars Space Knights heraldry sheet, available from EonsOfBattle.com. The bright yellow bled through the decal a little, so I sprayed on some matte varnish and then painted over the decal to touch up the colors, and separate the black of the decal from the hazard stripes. Then I did some more sponging yellow and black to make the decal look as beat up as the rest of the ram. Now that the hazards are done, I can finish up the rest of the ram. I threw some noble skin over the jaws and then gave these a dry brushing of silver. Then I did some more silver sponging over the rest of the front. It feels a little conspicuous that the bullet damage missed the hazard stripe, so I decided to add some more, using the point of a drill bit to make some dimples, then using my Dremel tool with a ball bit to widen these. I filled them in with some Tamiya plastic putty and then pressed the back of a paintbrush into these holes to make the putty squish out the sides, to make it look like the metal has been displaced from the impacts. I painted these new craters with black paint and then sponged on some more black. Then I used a brush to make some streaks coming out of each hole. Then I took some darkwood speed paint into my airbrush and I sprayed this over each hole to make them look burned. To finish them off, I hit them with a dry brushing of silver, and just like that, I have some very good looking impacts. Black armored vehicles can be boring, it's the absence of color. So anywhere I can, I like to try and get some more color in there. For these power generators, I want it to look like they're glowing with energy. I dripped some white paint into the gaps of the fan blades and then airbrushed on some maize yellow. Then after that, I wanted to work in some orange, so I mixed Nuclear Sunrise speed paint with fluorescent orange, and I sprayed this around the outside of each fan. With the glow in place, I did a dry brushing of red to make it look like the edges of the fan blades were cooling off, and I did a lighter dry brushing of black paint and then some gunmetal. Wanting to keep the bright colors going, I painted some of the wires leading to these turbines with some yellow-black stripes. Taking another look at those glowing power plants, I think it needs a little bit more yellow. I airbrushed a little bit more right in the center of each port. Now I've got a bunch of little things to take care of. For the Stormbolter and smoke launchers, I washed these with some noble skin, then a dry brushing of silver. Then for the doors of the hatch, I painted the insides with gunmetal. For the armor of the Stormbolter, I painted this in a yellow, reusing the colors from my hazard stripes. This is actually the Stormbolter from the Sororitas Rhino kit, with the fleur-de-lis carved off. Then for the little cameras, I have to make a decision. For techie bits in my Templars army, I have been using neon green. Do these count as a techie bit? I feel like green might be one color too many on these tanks, and I do paint my regular eye lenses in red. I think I'll go with red, but in a different style. I airbrushed some white ink over these screens and the searchlights in preparation for some bright red ink, and I put yellow over the searchlight. I picked out the cage over the headlights and searchlights in black. Then for the little camera screens, I painted these like gems, with some dark red on top and yellow on the bottom, then a glazing of pure red in the middle for a smooth transition. I edge highlighted these screens in yellow, and then I put a little dot of white in each corner to sell the shininess. I think it's looking pretty good. Looking around the tank, I found some more details to paint. The barrels in the back, I painted these in yellow, and I painted on a little triangle hazard warning on the top of each barrel. For all the canisters and equipment on the sides, I picked out each of these one by one, using red for the bombs, green for the jerry cans, brown and tans for the tarps, and for these big battery things, I think yellow. Now onto the big vehicle seals. I base coated these in brown and then mixed in more and more white paint to do some highlights, working up to almost pure white. Then for the top of the seals. For the cogs, I painted these in a 50-50 color scheme. For the Mechanicus cogs, and for the wax seals, they got the classic red treatment. Finally, with each thing painted, I can glue it all together. Some of these pieces gluing back together. And for the second time and the last time, this Vindicator is done. My Vindicator is done, and my Black Templars motor pool grows. Now that I have 3 painted Templar vehicles, that is a proper collection. And this guy, this particular Vindicator, has been with me since almost the very beginning of my Black Templars army, and I think I know why I never finished painting him. Space Marine vehicles are kind of metal boxes, and then you paint those metal boxes with the absence of color, and it gets even more boring. I think the trick is finding the fun in all the other stuff going on. This guy's big old ram plate, all of the extra armor and equipment, the precariously placed fuel barrels on the back. This is a really, really spicy looking tank, and I'm very excited that it looks this good because I got 2 more of them to paint up, and hopefully all 3 of them will look just as good as this guy. I'm pretty excited about this, but for right now, I feel like I learned a trick or 2 on this Vindicator, and I want to snowball that into another thing that has been taking up some room in my Black Templars pile of shame for far too long. These are my Black Templars impulsors. I actually got these and put them together for a tournament that I was playing in a couple years ago, and I gotta be honest, they did not perform great, but I will chalk that up to these not being painted. I've already been playing around with the Armored Assets bits, and I want to see just how good one of these suckers can look. These newfangled rhinos have been growing on me. I pulled off all the parts, and there are a lot of parts in these tanks. Sub-assemblies are pretty much required. Now to start loading it up. I want a lot of armor on this thing. Its only purpose is to chauffeur Space Marines around the battlefield, so it should look rugged. I started slicing off rivets and gluing down some extra armor. The parts printed very well, so they just need a few swipes of sanding twigs to get them perfect and flat, and with all the different shapes, I can really fill it up. For a few of the pieces, I used my hobby saw to cut the pieces smaller, so I could really cram in a lot of parts. I was able to almost cover the front and armor. Then I glued on some smoke launchers over the headlights. Then for the side panels, there was just enough room to get 2 supply racks under the window. I ended up clipping off the handles so that it would fit perfectly. Then I glued on some more supplies like jerry cans and this bolt cutter to the outside of the jet engine. I glued a small shelf and shovel to the other side. Then I put the searchlight on the side. This provides some light for when my Marines need to grab some gear off the racks. I'm liking how the bits are looking, and I added a few more spots of battle damage with the same Dremel plus Tamiya putty trick, and for one side of my tank, I left it empty. I intend to fill this up with a ton of Templars iconography and this little skull bit later. Now to finally get some paint on here. After a black prime, I hit it with a zenithal. On my Vindicator, I did a white dry brush, and I don't think it did much for me, so for this impulsor, I want to try sponging on some white to add some texture. Now that my tank is bright, it's time to darken it down. I went a little heavier this time with my black, making about 90% of the tank completely dark. Then I did my dry brushing a wolf gray. The black armor is done, and now it's decal time again. I put some big Templar crosses over the hatches, putting them on and then carefully cutting out the parts overhanging the gaps. Then I did some more Crusade badges, doing a little skull and then a circle with Roman numerals. Then for the side, I put a big old Templar cross, then put some text on the bottom, and then Crusade badges on either side, so it really fills this spot up. With the decals on there, I gave them a coat of matte varnish, then I sprayed a little bit more Templar soup over the decals to darken them and make them follow the highlights and shadows of my tank. To finish off this Templar shrine, I grabbed this fancy numeral skull and I started painting it up, putting some gold over the letters, tassels, and laurel wreath. Then I used some darkwood speed paint to shade the recesses. I mixed some gold paint with my silver to dry brush on some highlights, and I did the highlights on the skulls with white paint to get it perfect. When it was done, I glued it right over the decals so that the Templar cross is exploding out from around the design. With the decorations on there, I can start painting on the tank too. I put some dark red over all the armor, then I got to work dry brushing some pure red and then fiery vermilion using a small dry brush so I can get the paint right where it needs to go, avoiding the black armor. After that, I got to work sponging some silver all over everything. The sponge is layer 1 for paint chips, and then with a brush, I connected some of these chips into bigger scratches, especially on the corners and edges. I grabbed some gunmetal and I base coated all the metal bits, like these smokestacks and the handrails, giving these a wash with noble skin speed paint. Now, a lot of the tank is done, it's time for the lenses, and there are a lot. Out of the front window, I want it to look like it's glowing red. I used some painter's tape and silly putty to mask off a cone coming out of this port. Then I hit this spot and all the lenses with some white ink. With that white base coat, I sprayed some red ink over these spots. The red shows up extremely vibrant over the white. Then I pulled off the tape and it was looking perfect. I painted all the lenses just like I did on the Vindicator, using dark red and then yellow to make them look shiny. I really like how this looks, and I had to go back and do this to all my old tanks. In place, they look really good. And you know what else looks really good? All the awesome hobby products available from EonsOfBattle.com. Over there, we have all kinds of hobby goodies, great Hyde Studio bits to spice up your Space Marines, Army Painter paints, so many brushes, basing cork, and we have glue. Ultra thin and ultra thick super glue. And we have terrain. It's the best way to support us doing what we do by getting a membership. Each month, members get a credit good for any one train pack we've ever made, or the brand new one like the Armored Accessories Bits pack. For the multi-melta, I washed the cannon and the inside of the shield with some watered down noble skin. Then I painted the front of the shield, putting dark red on the bottom and then bright red on top, and glazing in the middle to make the transition smooth. After some sponging of red for texture, I mixed my red and yellow together to get an orange to do some edge highlighting. By then, the speed paint was dry, so I dry brushed the melta with some silver, and I did a sponging of silver to finish it off. Then it was time for all the other things. I made the handles of the bolt cutters yellow, then the tarps on the shelves brown. For the big jerry can, I painted this in yellow, just like the big barrels from the Vindicator, then green for the smaller canisters, and for the battery packs underneath, I did yellow before, but now I'm thinking gunmetal. I did a base coat, wash and dry brushing, and I like how these are looking more. With all the extras done, I painted the bullet impacts, starting out with dark wood, and while I had the brown speed paint in my airbrush, I dusted this over the floor. Then I hit the craters with the dry brushing of silver. Now everything on the tank is done, it's time for all the bits. These are still zenithal, so I put some noble skin into my airbrush and I blasted this over these parts. Once that was dry, I dry brushed these parts in silver to bring out all the details. Now I can finally assemble this, for the last time. I really need to get these painted and on the shelf because I have been really worried about losing parts, as they get shuffled around from box to box over the years being unfinished. Now that is a tank, and of course it needs a base. I blasted the ground with thinned down Vallejo earth, and also I sprayed this on the inside and wiped it around with a brush to get it to settle in the cracks. Then I hit the ground with the dry brushing of Pro Acryl Olive Flesh. Then I hit the rim of the base with some gloss black paint. To attach my ship to the base, I mixed up some epoxy and then squished it down into the flying stand. I lost track of the little clear puck it came with, and so I built these bases with chunks of wood to get them off the ground. After a bit, the epoxy was cured, and my tank is done. My first impulsor is now done. I bought this a long time ago, and I put it together a long time ago, but now it is painted. The newfangled Rhino. Half the transport capacity, but a fair bit more armor. I wasn't a big fan of the Primaris floaty tanks when I first saw them, but now that I've gotten a chance to put them together and paint them, I do really like them. They are pretty snazzy, especially with the extra armor. I feel like this extra armor and equipment and supplies and canisters all works together to help tell the story of my army, because I play the Black Templars, a very infantry-focused Space Marine army. I've got a bunch of ye olde knights with chain swords and power swords running around, and their crusade is fueled by righteous fury. But also, like, to be a fighting force, you need tactics and strategy and logistics, you know, that kind of boring stuff. And that is fulfilled by the Armored Corps. The Tech Marines and the battle tanks of my crusade are what are doing all of that boring logistics work so that the rest of my guys can swing their chainswords with righteous aband. I've been playing my Black Templars a lot more lately, and I've been doing a better job in those games because I've been leaning a little harder on the vehicles, particularly the Vindicators. And I do enjoy putting together my infantry. I love gluing on all the little purity seals and the skulls and the banners and the tassels and the reliquaries. I got all of these awesome bits to customize my dudes. And now that I have some bits to customize my vehicles, I've been enjoying these a lot more. 2 more Black Templars tanks added to the crusade. And now that I got the Armored Accessories Bits pack available from EonsOfBattle.com, both physical and digital, I am actually looking forward to putting together a bunch more. Next one's probably gonna be the second impulsor. Although I really should get a move on with those gladiators. I don't know, maybe I'll flip a coin. Thanks for watching.